A personal touch from the Chancellor. The seasons are closing in, the virus is closing in. Time to take one step back and one step forward. Rishi Sunak has scrapped plans for an autumn budget as the government responds to a spike in coronavirus. But the Chancellor is not clocking off.
You're doing really well.
Tomorrow, he will outline fresh emergency support for jobs threatened by COVID restrictions. The existing jobs furlough scheme is due to be phased out, but the Chancellor will signal that he is prepared to subsidise a proportion of wages. He's expected to incorporate ideas from two schemes. There's interest in a version of the German furlough scheme in which employees forced into part-time work have their wages topped up by the state. And there's a similar scheme promoted by the CBI in which the non-working hours of an employee would be covered by the state, the employer, but also through a pay cut. Finally, Cabinet Ministers are expecting some future tax breaks for businesses to help them through the crisis.
Make no mistake, there's a tsunami of job losses in the pipeline.
Under questioning from a veteran Labour MP, Boris Johnson signalled that action was on the way.
I think that the honourable member is entirely right about the gravity of the situation. And although it is true that some firms are powering through this, many face very difficult circumstances. And that's why we've put in the support that we have. That's why don't forget there's the job retention bonus at the end of the year to help firms to keep people in employment. But also that's why we're looking at a massive package now of investment in jobs and growth in the medium and the short, medium and the long term.
In what has been a mixed government response to coronavirus, the Treasury has been praised for prompt and decisive action. But that reputation was being called into question as new COVID restrictions were being introduced as economic support was due to be phased out. So Tory MPs are relieved that the Chancellor is acting, and they are delighted that the autumn budget has been scrapped. Excellent, one former Cabinet Minister told me, this means that I won't need to vote against tax increases to pay for the coronavirus response. One prominent Tory backbencher says the new measures show that all sides have to adapt.
I'm possibly one of the most free market conservatives and probably one of the most dogmatically free market conservatives. But I recognise that from a utilitarian point of view, we've had this disease hit us. The government has rightly taken some pragmatic steps. That includes keeping some businesses closed. So the government does owe a duty to have targeted support for those businesses they're keeping closed. This is just not a time for ideology. This is a time to be pragmatic.
A leading economist believes the Chancellor has no choice.
Well, it's not very surprising. When the government's been announcing the phasing back in of restrictions to how we run our economy, how we keep the virus under control, then obviously they can't go ahead with the current approach, which is phasing out the economic support for firms and for workers. So tomorrow the Chancellor will bring the economic policy back in line with the COVID policy. What we know is that the long-term damage from high unemployment lasts. It doesn't just last for the individuals affected, being lower employment, lower earnings for years to come afterwards, but it affects us all via the strength of our economy and actually the strength of our public finances, because we'll be paying those bills for years to come if we get this wrong.
A memento from a recent but more hopeful era of state support. Time now for more drastic action.